Now, just a little warning before we begin, there will be major spoilers in this video for the first 3 episodes of Kenobi, so if you haven't seen them yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Okay, so to the surprise of probably no one, thus far the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus has not been the universally loved piece of Star Wars content that maybe some fans had hoped it would be. It hasn't been that which brings all or a vast majority of the fan base together. Keeping in mind, though, that literally nothing is going to be loved by everyone. Which isn't to say that a lot of fans haven't been enjoying all or most of the series thus far. And if that's you, if you're nothing but happy with Kenobi, I think that's great, and I'm not here to change your mind or sour your enjoyment or anything like that. I myself, though it's been far from perfect, I found plenty of enjoyment in it thus far, but there are certainly aspects of it that aren't great, and there are fans who have raised some valid concerns or pointed out some issues with it. Problems with everything from the writing itself to the continuity with the films, or potential continuity. We do have to wait and see how it all plays out and will come together, or won't come together in the end. Then there are what appears to be some pretty major retcons, like the Grand Inquisitor seemingly being killed by Reva despite being in Rebels, which will take place after this series. There are also those who maybe think the show doesn't focus on Kenobi enough, that other characters are kind of stealing the spotlight or just outsmarting him at every single turn, that Kenobi just isn't very smart in this and keeps making dumb mistakes or decisions, like walking down the middle of a road on a planet controlled by Imperials while trying to hide from Imperials. Then, along those same lines, there are those who simply don't like or disagree with the way Kenobi is being handled overall, that he is way too broken and disagree with him having given up on nearly everything he once believed in, that they can't believe he'd ever be so far gone that he'd sit back and watch Darth Vader, who is of course Anakin, his former apprentice, that he'd watch him murdering people in the street. And though, yeah, he does eventually go out there and face Vader, he just ends up pretty much running away from him like a coward, you might say. And so there are plenty of fans who feel like this is the last Jedi Luke all over again, or that it's even worse than that was. There are those who think they are just utterly destroying this character right now. And yeah, I know this is where some will say, why can't fans just enjoy Star Wars instead of nitpicking and complaining about everything in regards to it? Why do Star Wars fans hate Star Wars more than anybody else? Why can't they just be thankful and or grateful to have any of it at all? And well, first of all, or to the latter half of that statement, I hear from so many people who don't like the complaining, which if you don't like it, that's fine, but I don't think most people complaining are really trying to ruin your enjoyment. But anyway, why not just be grateful to have Star Wars at all? Well, because it's not like Disney and Lucasfilm are just giving Star Wars away. You do have to pay for it and thus have every right to say how much bang for your buck you feel like you're getting. I mean, imagine making the same argument about, well, pretty much any other type of service or business out there. Imagine arguing you shouldn't complain about a restaurant with poor food and or service, that you should just be grateful that you paid for food and they served it to you. And before you say films and or shows are different somehow, that they're a form of art or something like that, plenty of chefs out there, and I've spent years of my life working in a kitchen, plenty of chefs out there very much consider what they do a form of art. But, like it or not, and again, I understand if you're someone who doesn't like the nitpicking and all the criticism, you just want to enjoy Star Wars. I get that, and I respect that, and that's fine. You don't have to watch any of my nitpicky videos if that's you. But even though I get it, I'm going to let Hayden Christensen answer why this is something that can and should be acceptable. And he's going to answer it with a recent quote when he was asked about all the backlash he faced playing Anakin Skywalker back during the prequels. I think it just goes back to the sort of ownership that people feel towards these characters. It's almost public domain. These characters really do belong to everybody. And first of all, well said by Hayden. That's one of the best answers I've ever heard any Star Wars actor give to any Star Wars related question in history. And so basically what he's saying here is the reason why people will nitpick and complain is because they care. They really care about these characters and have a sense of ownership over them. They feel like they know them on some sort of personal level, so when they act out of character, they take that personally as well. They oftentimes feel like they are being handled by someone who just doesn't understand them, or worse yet, by someone who just wants to change them and use them to tell the story they want to tell, not one that makes sense for the actual character and honors that character, This was one of the major problems with Rian Johnson and The Last Jedi in regards to Luke. Many fans just felt like Johnson destroyed the character, intentionally so, simply to tell the story he wanted to tell with him, not one that made sense given all we've seen of Luke before, not to mention the way his story ended when we last saw him, how it ended in Return of the Jedi, with him all smiling and happy with his friends and family, and on the verge of rebuilding the Jedi Order, as Yoda had told him to do with his dying breath. And so when next we see him, he's broken and given up on the Jedi and drinking fresh green milk, it feels off because we don't know or didn't see what broke him, and we only get that reference or only get to see what broke him explained away in a single flashback. However, when it comes to Kenobi, we know his story ends more on a, shall we say, downer, with his former apprentice turning on him, becoming a Sith and destroying the Jedi Order and helping the Empire come to power. We also know there's plenty of other tragedy in his past, like losing his master Qui-Gon Jinn, and he held the woman he loved in his arms as she died, that being Satine. And though, yes, there is a glimmer of hope at the bitter end of the prequels, with Luke and Leia being hidden, and we know eventually everything will come to fruition with them, and they'll help save the galaxy from the Sith and the Empire. But for Kenobi, it is, in my opinion, much more believable that he would, to some extent, lose his way while spending decades alone in the desert. But then again, maybe you feel differently about both of those characters. Maybe you think Luke being broken the way he was in The Last Jedi made perfect sense, and you loved that story. And when it comes to Kenobi, maybe you think he should be even more broken in this series, or maybe not broken at all. Maybe you don't want to believe that Obi-Wan Kenobi of all the Jedi in the galaxy would have ever lost his way. You feel he would have stayed strong and unwavering, nothing but true to his Jedi ideals as the years went by. And this is why there's almost no winning when it comes to using legacy characters unless you use them extremely sparingly and hold them true to the things that virtually every fan already agrees with about them. For example, nearly all fans love the hallway scene in Rogue One with Vader because, well, it was awesome to see, but it also just reinforces a belief pretty much all fans have about Darth Vader, that he would and could easily tear his way through a bunch of rebel soldiers in a hallway. No one's going to argue against him being able to do that. No one's arguing against anything seen or learned about Vader in that movie. But that said, even though Vader so far has been used pretty sparingly in Kenobi, though we still have 3 episodes to go, there has already been a moment or decision on his part, or made by those writing the character, that not all fans agree with. That being when he let Kenobi essentially get away for one reason or another in this most recent episode. Some don't think he'd ever let Kenobi go like that, not when he could have simply parted the fire with the Force and continued the fight or torture that way, or just once again grabbed him with the Force and pulled Kenobi back through the fire, or if he just crushed the droid that was rescuing Kenobi. It's not like we've ever not seen that before. But then others will argue this is more of a game of cat and mouse between him and Kenobi, that he wants him to suffer more, or that after 10 years of hunting for him and waiting for him, he's disappointed that this is what Kenobi has become and doesn't want to kill him until he faces, shall we say, the real Obi-Wan Kenobi once more. And all of this also applies to Luke, and I'm not talking about in The Last Jedi, but instead in The Mandalorian Season 2 and then in the Book of Boba Fett. Nearly everyone loves the way Luke was used in Mando Season 2. They loved seeing him tear his way through the Dark Troopers as he came to rescue Grogu. But then in the Book of Boba Fett, when he gave Grogu the choice to stay with him and learn the ways of the Force or to go back to Mando, plenty of fans were very upset that Luke would even give him this choice. They didn't expect him or want him to make him pick at all. They thought this was a break in the character. And speaking of The Mandalorian, and speaking of Rogue One before it, there's a very good reason why they are arguably the most enjoyed pieces of Disney Star Wars content out there, and or rarely have fans arguing over them. That being, they mainly used brand new characters with no preconceived notions about how they should be handled, or what they would or wouldn't do in a given situation. And when they did bring in legacy characters, again like Vader, they just mainly used them in ways that reinforced the commonly held beliefs about them. They showed them in a way everyone believes them to already be. And so I think there's a very good reason why you've heard a lot of talk out of Lucasfilm lately, out of Kathleen Kennedy herself, that it's time to move away from the Skywalker saga. They're finally understanding that you have to handle these legacy characters with extreme care and that maybe the best thing to do is not use them at all to finally make good new characters. Even though there are already rumblings and rumors out there that Kenobi could be getting a second season, which isn't too surprising, I guess, considering it's apparently the most popular show ever in the short history of Disney+. And when you consider how competitive the streaming market is, and that at the end of the day, money outweighs all else, whether or not they're learning this lesson with the legacy characters in this series or in general isn't going to matter if they can still make money with them. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how you feel about all this. How do you feel about the use of legacy characters, and what do you think about the way Kenobi is being handled thus far in this series? Take to the comments below, let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.